Welcome back to the SP Streamer podcast. I'm your host, Michael Simeone. You can follow me on Twitter at SP Streamer. We are part of the Fantrax and FantraxHQ.com family. Let's introduce my co-host, as always, and that is Lauren Auerbach. What's going on, Lauren?
Not much. Hello, Michael. How are you?
Not too bad.
Yeah.
The Mets are still not in the playoff picture.
No.
We're trying, but it's
Mhm.
not really working out for
E
us.
for effort.
I know
Yeah.
your Braves are still. I think they're still leading the way, right?
They're still
Phillies
kicking.
are.
Yep.
Yeah. So that must be nice, but
It's fine. I can't complain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On today's podcast, we're going to basically just talk about who we got wrong and why, because I feel like it's pretty important to, obviously, it's nice to celebrate the things you did right, but it's good to look at what you did wrong as well. And then this way, you can learn from your mistakes and become a better fantasy baseball player. Before we do that, though, I got to introduce our guest. He is a writer and contributor at Fantasy Data, RotoViz, Fantasy Pros, Roto Underworld, and Fantrax. He covers 2 sports in baseball and football. He's one of the most fit men on Twitter. He's verified on Twitter, where you can follow him at Corbin_Young21. And he is our guest, Corbin Young. What's going on, man?
What's up? Thanks for the intro. Taking some notes from Doug or something, man. I don't know what's going on there. That was impressive. I appreciate it.
I did learn from him. It was as I was typing up, I was like, man, how do you have time to write and be a part of all of these websites, Corey?
I don't know. I'm trying to reel that in a little, especially with school kicking back up. It's hard to, working full time in person. It's hard to do all that too. But got to balance it all.
Especially with all those workouts that you do every day. I see you post.
Yeah. It's like the therapy, I need it.
Yeah, definitely. I get that. There's nothing better than exercise to help with stress and all that stuff. Before we get into who we got wrong and why, we're going to basically just kind of do roundtable, like each say one person, keep going around and whatnot. But I do want to bring up Max Scherzer real quick. Since being traded to the Dodgers, he has a 0.88 ERA with a 1.26 FIP, 2.28 SIERA, 35.1 K walk percentage, which is ridiculous. Arguably the best pitcher in the second half. Quick question for you guys. I didn't put this on the outline, but where do you think you would rank him amongst other starting pitchers for next year? We'll start with you, Corbin. We're not going to hold you to it, but if you were to just kind of guess where you think you'd put him right now, where would you put him?
I'd say he's got to be like top 5.
That's what I was going to
say. He's probably one. I didn't note him when I got wrong, but he's definitely a guy that I just wasn't even on my radar to, have there.
I think a lot of people.
There's another guy I'll note later who I think I got wrong, that I think kind of deserves to be up there too. I'd probably say top 5.
Would you put him top 3?
Because it would go Cole,
and then it's like whoever you think. There's a lot of people there. I mean, when I posted a poll between Cole and DeGrom, and a lot of people said, "What about Buehler? What about Scherzer? What about Corbin Burns?" It's going to be kind of tough to decide between all these people. Some said even Wheeler. I mean, it's pretty crazy. What about you, Lauren? You think you're top 5 also?
I would also say top 5. I will say going into this season, I discounted him a little bit just because he's older, had an injury-prone season last year. So I was a little bit on just slightly, kind of downward trend with him this season, but, that came back to bite me. And living in DC, he pitched here, and it's just like you don't go against him until you see that full decline. So I think top 5 is a good kind of, he's in there, but it also hedges your bet a little bit.
Yeah, I get that. I'm not quite sure where I'm going to put him, but I don't know. It's tough to figure him out because it looked like he was on the decline, but clearly it's not. He's not, but he's not getting any younger. He still does have somewhat of injury history, so that'll be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go through who we got wrong and why. Basically, like I said, we'll just kind of go around and discuss, I guess, who you got wrong. Tell us what you saw, what you think went wrong or what you could do to improve that moving forward. Corbin, we'll start with you. Give us your first player that you were wrong on.
I don't have this player in a ton of teams, but I think Blake Snell is someone that I thought would provide some kind of ace-like production, or at least have must-start status. I mean, I would say he probably hasn't had that until like the last 4 starts or something. So pretty brutal.
Yeah.
Kind of joke that I have this team where my first 3 picks are Mike Trout, Jack Flaherty, and Blake Snell. Safe to say it's one of my worst redraft teams this year. But I think not to oversimplify, but I think it just looks like kind of ditching the changeup in the past 4 starts, not including the injury shortened one recently, but kind of led to him kind of breaking out here at the late stages here. But that's one guy that just kind of popped up, and I was scrolling through the ADP. I was like, oh, yep.
Snell's kind of hard because it's not like you could have really analyzed him wrong. You know what I mean? Like we all know he has the stuff. He looked okay last year. So it's just like kind of weird. It just kind of popped up out of nowhere. And you're right. That's a good point about the changeup. Basically what he needed to do was ditch it, and it worked wonderfully for him. So maybe he'll be better next year, but he'll definitely be a controversial pitcher as in terms of ADP. I feel like a lot of people aren't going to really know where to put him. So I think it's going to be super interesting.
Yeah.
Lauren, who is one of your players that you missed?
I missed out on Zach Wheeler this year. I know he's had a little bit of a rough August, but on the whole, he's been having an incredible season. And for me, it was one of those things, I think, kind of in terms of assessing players. I think looking at your 2020, it was hard for some players. I had some difficulties with some players assessing just kind of what their 2021 would look like. And to me, Zach Wheeler kind of stands out here. It's like, in his 2020 season, he was on it. He was in a new team. He went from the Yankees to the Phillies.
Nice.
And, you saw you saw a strikeout. He wasn't a big strikeout guy, but you saw his strikeouts dip to a career low. His ground ball rate went up to a career high, just under 56%, and he had a career best 2.92 ERA. So it was, it's kind of like looking at that and being like, okay, well, what do you do with all of this stuff? And so I kind of threw out his 2020 in general, and then looked at his track record. And in doing that, you're looking at a guy with, like I said, a low strikeout rate, kind of, a mid to high career, high 3 ERA, sorry. And, when looking at his kind of FIPS, xFIPS, Sierra, that's all kind of in the high 3s to 4. So this was a guy that I was just like, and some guys, they do take longer to develop. And going into next year, I think he's someone that will kind of fly up the, his ADP will just be remarkably higher next year. But I don't know that you could have foreseen this type of year that he's having, because it has been so incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I have 0 shares of him, and I was actually out on him. I was a little worried about the injury history, but I think I was a little too conservative with him on it. But what's interesting about Wheeler is kind of like what you said, his strikeout rates and stuff completely dipped last year. And we all thought that Philly was going to unlock that with him, like unlock that strikeout potential that the Mets couldn't do. And now it's happening a year later. And I think it's just the thing to learn from that too, is just small samples. I mean, and things like that take time. When these guys go to new teams, it's not going to be an instant change all the time. And sometimes it just will take a little bit of time to do that. So maybe we shouldn't quit on a player that quickly. Right. When we think a new team can really unlock a new level for a player. Corbin, do you have any shares of Wheeler? I
don't, but it's funny you brought him up, because he's a guy that I would text back and forth with Dave Swan a little bit, like early in the season. And like I listed him as a guy that like he's kind of a must-have, but I don't have him anywhere. But when I look at ADP, I think it's because he's like around pick 100, this year. So it's like I'm a big like get my closer basis one kind of earlier. Okay. So the pitching early too. I'm a heavy pitching guy. But yeah, so like I probably took like Ryan Presley or one of these like high-end closers right where he's going. So that's why he probably wasn't on my radar, since I kind of
it.
load up on boring guys like Lance Lynn, who I just can't quit.
I love Lance Lynn.
Everyone loves Lance Lynn. You can't
Love
go
Lance
wrong
Lynn.
with Lance Lynn. All right, my first one, it's gonna be Brad Keller. I liked him a lot coming to this year, and it was strictly because of innings pitched. I think I put way too much, emphasis on that coming into the season, just because, I mean, a lot of people did. It just was so unknown. And while his skills were just okay, like I wasn't expecting Brad Keller to take a next step or anything. I was expecting decent ratios, which you're not getting, but I more so was expecting a lot of innings pitched from him, because the Royals did let him go deep into games last season. So I was thinking maybe hit 100 innings with like a 4 ERA and like decent whip. And I thought that would be valuable, especially because he was going late in drafts, but it didn't work out that way. So I think moving forward, everyone's gonna have less emphasis on innings pitched anyway now, since we're not coming off such a shortened season. But I think moving forward, I just need to put a little less emphasis on that and more so on skill level, because I was out on a lot of guys because of innings pitched, like that have been really good. One of them who is, I think, or was leading the league in innings pitched, which is Bueller. I was out on Bueller because I thought there's no way they're going to let him go. I was like, watch him go to like 150, 160 innings max. And that is not the case at all. So I think it definitely hurt me, certainly. And I think I need to rely on skills a little more than just try and go for the guys who will go the distance in terms of innings pitch. I feel like it's just very, very hard to predict that. So yeah.
And the Dodgers have such a record, it's like you get Dodgeritis, and, it's like they're so deep that they can just pull these guys and limit these guys, so that's been their history so far. So
yeah. So I mean, he was someone that it's just crazy that they did that out of nowhere. It's definitely interesting. All right, Corbin, who is your next player?
Speaking of a Royal, I guess a guy that I love is Hunter Dozier.
I think we all got burned by him.
I mean, like he's just someone that I think, like, I thought there was the potential for like double-digit steals. He's already got like the 25 home runs on his record, but just brutal. I think I had to drop him in TGFBI at one point. I just was like, I'm just gonna keep hanging on. It just wasn't worth it.
I did that too.
And but it just I don't know what the major issues. I mean, barrel rate's dropped a little bit. He's pulling the ball a little bit more. Last year I kind of threw out just because I think he had some injuries or there's some COVID issues or something like that. But I don't know, man. The WOBA against a shift looks awful. So I mean, he's kind of pulling it a little more. I don't know if that's the case, but I was just been brutal, and I don't know. I feel like I'll probably buy in again, but his ADP's got to drop.
I was gonna say, so did you learn that you're not gonna buy into him again?
Nope.
But apparently not, Corbin.
I mean, like if he's he's like a guy like Brian Reynolds. Like I just can't quit. So like if he falls,
Brian Reynolds is good though.
I know, but if he falls far, I might be like, all right, I'm coming back around.
All right. So now I know if I'm ever in any drafts with you next year that I know you'll be owning Dozier, and I don't even have to look his way. All right, Lauren, who's your next player?
I'm going to go with Eugenio Suarez. For me, it was someone with that power potential kind of sucks you in. He had 34 homers in 2018 and 49 in 2019. And then he had 15 homers in 57 games in 2020. Now, I did know that, he started to sell out for power in 2019, and that's where you started to see him kind of pull the ball a little bit more. His rate went from 42.7 all the way up to 52%. And then you started seeing that, that increase in strikeout rate and then that correlating kind of decrease in batting average. And I think that was the thing for me. I didn't buy the steep drop off in batting average, from 2019 to 2020, he went from 271 to 202. And I was like, there's no way it's going to continue to drop or be around that rate. I really thought that it would have been maybe 230, 240, which I think at that point you can decide whether you want someone who may give you 35, homers and, pair that with kind of a lower batting average. Some people like that profile, some people don't. But I just didn't think that that batting average would continue to drop, and he's sitting right now with a 179 batting average on the season with 26 home runs. That's really tough to roster. And I think I'm out. I would be out on him in general next year.
I think so I actually took him in a league that I was in with Dave McDonald, and he actually said to me, that kind of opened my eyes when I drafted him, because I was asking him about my draft, and he was just like, what does he give you that someone else doesn't, that you could get, like 5 rounds later, like a Soler or something. And I was like, it's a good point. Like, I feel like, he was definitely going too high. I think what sold me on him is actually one of the most accurate projections has been the Bat X, and the Bat X loved Suarez this year. So I kind of bought into that a little bit. Plus, like you said, I was hoping that average would kind of come up and have that power. But I guess, sometimes, it doesn't work out, but it also kind of changed my thinking to think, which I ended up doing in later drafts and ended up working out better, was you don't have to strive for power that early in a draft, because you could definitely find it later on.
That's true. Yeah.
So, and if you build up a good enough average, like guys like that later on, even if they don't hit good for a lot of average, it won't matter as much, but at least you're getting the power. So,
yeah.
The next player for me is Yoan Moncada. So Moncada, after last season, came out, he had COVID and was recovering from COVID, and basically said how much it affected him and all that kind of stuff. He only hit 225 last year. And so I thought, okay, maybe that's what, kind of screwed up his season last year. And a lot of people coming into 2020 weren't sure what to do with Moncada, because in 2019 he hit for 315 with 25 homers, 10 bags, but his BABIP was over 400. So I thought maybe you go back to 2019. I know the BABIP is high, but Tim Anderson is hitting well with a high BABIP. Why can't Moncada? And I think that was a mistake on my part, to just automatically think that everyone could be like Tim Anderson. If they've done it before, they could do it again, but that's certainly not the case. So I was definitely wrong on Moncada. I feel like, how can you really be in on him next year? He didn't really give you anything this year. He's low average, not a lot of power, not too many bags either. So I feel like he's just somewhat of a lost cause at this point. Did either of you draft Moncada at all?
I was really low on Moncada this year. It's a similar thing where I didn't know what to do with the COVID, but I also just, I don't know. I don't know what it was exactly, but I feel like I was lower than consensus on him, and there's a lot of love for him out there. But I think kind of looking kind of at his kind of lines overall, it's just like, like for me, it was really the K rate, and I kind of wanted to see a little bit more from him before I fully bought in.
What about you, Corbin?
No, he's the guy that I was like, just throw out 2020, I mean, he was probably one of the more vocal players that was just like, COVID was brutal, and you just look at it, it's like, BABIP's so high, I mean, career line drive rate, just power, just it's gone, and
it's weird.
And it's just kind of one of those, like, it just looks like he's just a worse than a league average player. So it's hard to, but we know, I think there's more talent. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of just bounces back in 2022, but
I mean, maybe he'll be a decent buy low. It depends where he's going. I mean, if he's going low enough where I could just get him crazy late, where like it would even cost me if he ends up not rebounding and just add someone else off the wire, then I feel like it's definitely worth the add, because I mean, highly touted prospect for a reason. So, all right, Corbin, who's your next player?
This one can be short. Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
Me too.
I have him on my list too.
The best. Sorry, Corbin, before you go over. The best is Toby Backflip Crazy. Do you guys see every
Yeah,
time
yeah.
he home runs, he puts a tour of shame gif because he was telling everyone that he's not touching him. So I have one share of him and I only did it just in case. And thank God that worked out. So go ahead, Corbin.
No, I mean, this one's short. I mean, I wrote up like a bold prediction piece that was like, he's going to hit 40 plus home runs. Well, I didn't really roster him anywhere, so it doesn't really matter. I'm not like reaping any of those rewards, but I think it's just one of those things. And I think Vlad Sedler mentioned this, but it's like one of those things where you just like, there's some players where like the ADP doesn't reflect like the production that's already happened, but there's some players where you have to take that leap and be like, all right, this is the guy that's going to do it this career. You don't want to like, I mean, next year he's probably going to be pushing up into that round 1 territory, right? So it's like you're going to be, are you going to be drafting him here in round 1? I don't know. I mean, now it's kind of like this.
I don't know.
It's one of those, is he going to repeat that? But he's a guy that I just have none of, and I'm just, like just super, just like, oh, I just wish I had drafted him one time.
Yeah, I think that stadium in Buffalo helped a lot too, because that was the best like hitter's ballpark for a while. Do you have shares, Lauren?
I don't. I was actually he made my list as well, because I was like less, I kept him kind of down in my ranks, and I just didn't really buy into. I was kind of a wait and see. I know what his potential is. And, I know that he's got this power potential. I know that he can hit the ball very hard. But for me, it was always kind of looking at his ground ball rates. He had, like a 50% in 2019, like close to 55% in 2020. And his launch angle was never really great. And it decreased from 2019 to 2020 to 4.6 degrees. And this season, it's up to 9. And this is his first season where, he didn't have a sub 9% barrel rate. It's up to a double digit. It's 14.4 this season. So I basically was like, if he can figure out how to elevate the ball, great, then it's going to work. And he's just going to be able to unlock everything. And, but I still kept him low because I was like, well, I don't know that this will be the season to do that. But looking back, it's like, you don't have that crystal ball. You don't know when it's going to happen. And I am kicking myself because he is he's such a highly touted prospect, and you just kind of have to believe in that at some point, and that these guys will kind of find their way to the top. And he's leading the league in 45 homers now. So
I mean, like you said, I said the exact same thing. I was like, I'll sit on the sidelines and watch and just see what happens. But like I said, luckily in one of my NFBC teams, I was like, it was the last one I did, and I was like, let me get a share just in case this actually happens. So at least I ended up with 1 share.
Yeah.
All right, Lauren, who's another player for you?
So this is a guy that is kind of like later in the drafts. I thought would be kind of a sneaky source of runs and steals, and that was Andres Jimenez. I loved the fact that in the minor leagues between high A and double A, he had a combined 66 stolen bases in 2018 and 2019. He didn't really walk much, but he generally had strikeout rate around kind of 20-21% in the minors, and then average to a plus average batting average. So that was something that remained consistent in his brief time, in 2020, where he played 49 games, and that stat line kind of played through. So I was like, this is going to be great. It's like, you can get him late. He's not going to hurt you in batting average. He's not going to really give you any power, but he plays, multiple positions. And, I made, I think, an incorrect assumption that I was like, he'll be batting off in Cleveland. They like to run. This is good. But, you fast forward to this season, and he never really started, leading off. He was always kind of in the back of the lineup there, and he really struggled at the plate. And he sent down to AAA, and he never had a batting average above 207 at any point, any month in this season. And now he's back up, and he's in a platoon role, and he's got a batting average below the Mendoza line on the season. So I think my takeaway from that is that you can kind of look at kind of a minor league kind of track record, but you never really know sometimes how these guys will play. And especially for non kind of big kind of high prospects. So you just don't know, and don't make assumptions about where people will play in a lineup, especially if you're banking on that the stolen bases. So yeah, that was
I got lucky with him because I was in on him, but as soon as I heard that he would start in the minors, I just was out because I had no idea when he'd come up, any of that stuff. So yeah. All right. I'm going to mention one that I have to mention because of our Discord membership channel. All year, well, at least the beginning of the year, everyone was asking me in that channel, would you prefer Sandy Alcantara or Pablo Lopez? And it actually became an inside joke in there where I would constantly just yell Pablo Lopez to them. Lopez didn't have a bad season. He just got hurt, but he had a 3.03 ERA with a 27 K rate, which is great. But Sandy has been very good, and he has made a lot of improvements, and he actually looks to be like a league winner at this point because his second half has just been insane. Overall, he's a 3.10 ERA with a 24.3 strikeout rate, but that strikeout rate has gone way up in the second half. Basically, he finally developed a pitch that can create chases outside the zone. His strikeout rate is way up. He's on pace for over 200 innings again, which he's done before, or he went 190, I think, another one. So he seems to be that rare workhorse. And I just think that he's definitely going to be more valuable than Pablo Lopez. The lesson learned here for me, I don't know if there really is one. I just feel like I need to point out that I was wrong on it. Because guys can just surge at any time. You don't really, sometimes it's hard to predict that kind of stuff. But yeah, so I think Alcantara over Pablo Lopez is the way to go moving forward. I still love Pablo Lopez though, so don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
All right, let's go around one more time. Corbin, give us one more player.
It'd be wrong of me to not mention Robbie Ray. It's just a dude that just wasn't even on the radar again. Just earlier in the season, I kind of looked in early May. I was kind of doing some research, and he was just pounding the zone, and there was a note from this beat writer in the Athletic that the Blue Jays pitching coach was just trying to help him simplify things. He basically just turned to the fastball slider, just by pitch and overall just pounding the zone. Ridiculous career best K- BB rate. I didn't even think a 6.5% walk rate was possible for Robbie Ray after having double-digit walk rates for 3 or 4 straight seasons. But his ADP is probably going to jump. I think the question remains, do you think he can replicate that recipe again?
Yeah, that's going to be the hard thing with him. I was lucky. Luckily, I have a lot of shares of him. And the only reason why, and I guess it's a good lesson to know too, is the reason why I thought he had such a low ADP. However you look at it, he was being drafted really late. And I didn't understand it because sure, he didn't have a great season. Sure, his walk rate's always high, but he always had that high strikeout rate. So I figured if he figures it out, then he can be an ace, which has happened. And you're getting him so late. And if it doesn't work out, at least you're getting a pitcher with strikeouts and you can play matchups with. So I felt like it was really smart to take him. And I don't know if there's going to be any pitchers like that when it comes to ADP this year. But if so, always go for those high upside guys because stuff is stuff. If you have good stuff, you have good stuff. And you can figure it out at any moment. So I think it's important for guys like that who are going late to kind of jump on them. But yeah, a lot of people did look at him like you did, Corbin, where he just looked like a complete disaster. And it was just like, what the heck's going to happen with this guy? Who knows? And
pitching in Toronto, or with the hitters park, I was just like, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I totally get the worry. But yeah, there you go. You learn. What about you, Lauren? Who's your next player?
My next player is Paul Goldschmidt. He was someone that I prematurely was like, no, he's just going to kind of, you're going to see this downturn in production. And for me, I was looking at, his hard hit rate, it had been decreasing each year since 2017. going from a 47.1 all the way down to 40.7 in 2020. And likewise, his slugging was going down in that time. So I thought you would see kind of a bigger drop in power. And I thought he was done stealing. I don't know where his steals have come from this season. He's at 12. The last time, he was in double digits. That was also in 2017. So, for me, I kind of thought that he's 34 years old. And so, I thought that he was more of maybe a three plus kind of category contributor. But that turned out to be wrong. I prematurely kind of dug his fantasy baseball grave, and kind of touched upon it a little bit, say with Max Scherzer. It's just like, whether it's an older player that you think is going to be, who may be injury prone, unless you really start to see, I think, kind of a full decline, just kind of pump the brakes on that, I think. So now I don't know that we'll see another double digit Paul Goldschmidt year, next year in steals. But he's a 5 category contributor, and he really came on strong after the All-Star break, and good for him, because I prematurely dug his grave.
Yeah, those old boring players always happen to be valuable, like Yuli Gurriel this year and many others. I did see something interesting. I think it was Eno Saris put it out, something about like the age curve with fantasy. And I mean, you can see what the Giants are doing with all these older guys, and true. Like, they're playing so much better, and how that curve might be not as much of a cliff as it used to be, basically because of analytics, better, medical staff, or training, whatever it is. So, we might not be seeing those drop-offs like we used to.
Yeah.
Or I guess maybe the drop-off is going to get later on, in players' careers than it used to be.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
My last player is just going to be Brady Singer. Basically, he started using his slider over 40% towards the end of last season, and he was pitching really well that way. I automatically assumed that would be the case this year, but it wasn't. He was throwing it in like the 37% range. As of late, he's back to throwing it 40% now, and he's pitching better. And I just thought it was a quick, nice little easy lesson where, maybe it's not the best to buy into pitch mixes in a short amount of time. Maybe it's better to really see someone change their pitch mix for half a season or an entire year, not really just a month. And when I was actually typing this up, I started thinking of Aaron Savale, and that was because in 2020 season, I don't know if you guys remember, he dominated his first month. And it's because he wasn't really throwing his fastball. He was throwing all his breaking pitches, and then out of nowhere, he switched back to going to fastballs. So I feel like there's a lot of, it's hard because there's game planning, there's how the pitcher feels throwing the pitches. There's a lot of things in there that could determine a pitch mix. And I think, so I think when you look and evaluate players, or I guess pitchers, if you see a pitch mix for just a month, I feel like it's not the best to buy into that instantly, and to make sure that they keep that new pitch mix over a longer period of time. And maybe that'll actually mean something. So, all right, that does it. Nice little quick episode, the way we like to do it here. Corbin, if you could just let everyone know where they could follow you, where your work's going to be, if you got anything coming up, all that stuff.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me. You can find me on Twitter at Corbin_Young21. Like Michael said earlier, doing a bunch of dual sports here, football and baseball, finishing off baseball season. I'll have a buy or sell article for Fantrax tomorrow. Talking a little bit about Blake Snell and Ian Happ. But from here on out, just mostly football after baseball ends, and so baseball might take a little bit of a pause here, but, other than that, trying to maintain the 2 sports and, the rest of the life going on.
I don't know how you do it. I cannot do 2 sports. Me and Lauren were talking about this. I was like, because Lauren's doing football and baseball also, and I'm like, I can't do football. I would go insane if I did.
It's tough in September. It's that crossover month. It's a little rough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not only that too, you have to continue doing work. Like you don't get really a break. You know what I mean? It's just continuous all the way through. So it's definitely rough. But All right, that does it. Me and Lauren will not be back next week, but the week after, we're actually going to predict the first round of the 2022 drafts in our last episode before the season ends, and then we'll end up taking a little break, but we'll talk about that more next podcast. So next week we're off, but the week after we will be back on. Yeah, so that about does it, guys. Thanks for listening. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at SPStreamer. Check out our website, spstreamer.com. If you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe. Please rate and review, as it's really important to the podcast. And thanks again, guys. We will talk to you soon.